Hey, welcome back to my channel. This is just a kind of a lazy Sunday afternoon, and sometimes I just like to play around in my shop. So what I decided to do was to take a slab of pine that had been sitting around out in the yard. It was out in the weather for a couple of years. It's got some rot and around the edges, the outside edges of the tree, a little bit of rot. It's not the best piece of wood in the world, but just wanted to play around with just flattening the slab. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I didn't spend a lot of time doing it. So this is my slab flattening video. So enjoy.
Okay, it was some years ago that I had a big old pine tree in my yard, and I decided to cut it down because it was kind of in my way around my shed. So I almost completely destroyed my shed when I cut it down. But anyway, I decided that I wanted to keep some of that wood and use it for stuff. I still have a bunch of big logs out in the back behind the shed. Oops, looks like my wife came home. She got home from church early because they canceled it because of the storm. So I was a little bit confused why she was home. But anyways, back to this slab that I have. I decided to just cut out a chip or a couple of chips out of it. Unfortunately, I left this log out in the weather for way too long, and it ended up probably 2 to 3 inches around the periphery. The outside edge is rotted pretty bad, but it's held together, and I just want to try to do something with it. I do enjoy my coffee, so have a drink on me. And so I figure I can fill in that rot with some clear epoxy and try to make the slab look halfway decent. It's got a bunch of knots in it, which I think are pretty cool, and I think once I get this all sanded and flattened, it'll look pretty nice, and I'll probably use it for a bunch of I don't know, display props in videos or something or another. But I think the knots just look really cool. For the clamping, nothing fancy. I just decided to hold the clamps on a pretty steep angle, and one clamp really puts force against the other clamp on the other side of the log at about 180 degrees apart, and it holds the slab down pretty securely. I didn't have to worry too much about that. So I set those clamps up, and then I flipped the log over, and of course I cleaned up the table a little bit. As I flipped the log over, the slab I should say, and put the clamps on, I had to reposition it a little bit just to get it to hold in place, but I did get it in place. So then I went and milled up the back side. Altogether, I removed a 1/2 inch from each side, and I did that in increments or step down increments of 100 thousandths per. So you could see me every once in a while go through some adjustments or looking at the computer, and that's what I'm doing, is I'm moving the Z in a downward motion 100 thousandths, because I could see that pretty easily on the control panel. In Mark III, you can press the tab key, and that opens up an extra little display screen where you can look at the jog increments. So what I did was I put my jog increments. I believe that I was running at about 50 or 75 inches per minute, and my spindle RPMs were running at about 10,000 RPMs, which is fine for this. That's an inch and a quarter. What do they call that? A bowl cutting bit or just a facing bit? So that's what I was running at, 10,000 RPMs and at about 50 inches per minute. On my control pendant, I have a setting called constant velocity, and what that setting allows me to do is to just turn the dial, and no matter how fast I turn it, it's just going to go at that constant velocity that I have set in my jog amount in Mach 3, like I said, about 50 or 75 inches per minute. The backside's nowhere near as impressive looking as the front side, but I think it's cool anyway.